Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Guilbault Girls. Today's guest is Jenice Watson, Executive Director of A Buddy Just Like Me. Jenice currently lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. She enjoys the outdoors and music. She has two wonderful boys and has been married to her husband for almost 15 years. Jenice and her family founded A Buddy Just Like Me to help individuals with the diagnosis, their families, and caregivers to be able to find and create meaningful connections. In this episode, we're going to hear about her son, Wes, who lives with cerebral palsy, and how she launched her nonprofit. So first of all, I'm so excited to have you on the show and share with the folks the good works that you're doing. It's so important to make those connections, not only to have that support, but to share the resources and then just to have that knowing that you're not alone. My hope for our podcast today and just throughout is to share the resources to others, because there's so many people out there that, again, they just they don't know what they don't know, so hopefully they stumble upon this and they can find more out. So, and your voices matter, and what you're doing is really making a difference in so many lives. And you've just begun. So I'm excited to interview you today. How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm so appreciative and I feel humbled that you asked me. So I'm here for it and ready to get into it. So it's exciting.
Awesome. And it's so funny because I when you first started, I saw one of the sponsored ads on Facebook and I started following and I signed up for the newsletter. And then I had posted about the podcast in one of the million CP groups, and then boom, all of a sudden your name was tagged. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, how awesome. That's going to be so cool. So I was
yeah, we need each other. I think that's what I've found the most in this community is you only know when you said it best. And so finding people is important.
Exactly. So before we go into A Buddy Just Like Me, tell me a little bit about your pregnancies. You said you have two boys. How old are they now? And did you have any difficulties with your first pregnancy?
Right. So, wow. So we're going to get into the part that I don't normally have information on. So I'm excited. Yes. So I have two sweet boys. My oldest is McCoy. He just turned 12 on Monday. And my youngest is West. He is 8 years old. McCoy's pregnancy was typical for my first pregnancy. I did all the birthing classes. I did everything I was supposed to do and actually had him emergency cesarean. His neck was wrapped with the cord 3 times. And so he was in the NICU for 8 days after having him. And actually with him on the CPAP machine, the nurses were like, there's a likelihood he might have these diagnoses, and cerebral palsy was one of them, but McCoy is totally typical. Nothing affected him after he recovered from the NICU, which was awesome and kind of like enlightening because I didn't know any of those big words, but we just carried on. And then I had my sweet West, and my pregnancy was really rough with him. I had really hard pregnancies in the fact that like the outcomes were not what you plan. And that's life, right? Nothing goes as you plan, but when you're a mom and all that responsibility of how they come into the world is on you. Both of my labors were not pretty and very scary. And so for me and my husband,
did that push you off for like holding off to having another child and make
100%
that same?
Yeah. So McCoy and West are 4 years apart. And so I also am a big advocate of when you're planning your life, you're planning the structure of your family. Once you have one, then you decide, okay. And for me, I work full time. My husband has a very demanding job. And so we thought, how are we going to space our kids? And it was a big factor, the way that my labor went. I was really nervous. And I think every mom is, no matter what number of kid it was. And I think that's the big resounding, at least in the medical field, for my experience, I got, well, it's your second pregnancy a lot. And that is so surface for someone who every pregnancy is different, and I understand, but every baby is its own unique challenge. So West, I actually, that was a big puzzle for me because I got pregnant with West, and at about 16 weeks, I hemorrhaged, and I went to the hospital, and they said, well, it's either 50-50, he's going, like, the baby will survive or it won't. So that was a struggle for my mental health because here I'm trying to like feel attachment, but I don't want to get too attached. And so then about 20 weeks, I got told that I had placenta previa, so that my uterus had grown, the placenta lining had gone into my cesarean scar. And so they gave me the statistic of when this baby's ready to come, you can either have a hysterectomy or we're going to have to tie your tubes because it's not safe for the structure of your anatomy to have any more babies. And for me, Ben and I had already decided 2 was perfect for the way that we wanted to raise our family and financially and all those things that come with babies. They're not just a life, right? So luckily, I feel glad that I felt that way already when I wasn't really given a choice. So then West was born, and he came out perfectly healthy, except for they couldn't figure out his sugar. And I had like done the glucose test and everything was fine. So they couldn't balance out his sugar. So he was in the NICU for 7 days, but nothing other than his sugar levels. And I was, it was so hard to see him get testings, and they were taking blood from everywhere, So actually, I'll have to dive more into that. But for me, my labors were not fun and not beautiful and not anything that, so for me, childbirth was very scary. And so I was lucky that I had my 2 beautiful boys, but I was good with the 2 because it's, daunting, and the NICU is a whole nother ball game. And I just feel lucky that I got my 2 that I have, and they're a joy. But yeah, for me, that's how my pregnancies went. Pregnant, I was fine. The labor part was not the best for me. It was kind of horrific, actually. Now that I think about it, I don't often think about that part, but yeah. So that was actually something that came up a lot when West originally got his diagnosis, as I listed all these things. Well, could it be because I hemorrhaged? Could it be because of placenta previa? Could it be, all these things? And they all said, no, 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 because you take it on, at least for me in my experience, I took it on and what could I have done differently? And that's just the naive part of life. You always take it on, well, what did I do wrong? And there was a lot of grieving in that process when he got his diagnosis, thinking of all these moments, but all the doctors had cleared all of that. So I'm not quite sure. It ended up being, the doctor said there was enough scarring on his brain from his MRI at 6 months old that he had had a stroke in utero sometime in my 3rd trimester. So a blood clot went to his brain, and there's nothing I could have done. Right. And for me, I was just thinking like all these moments, they flash like, I feel like we all live in a movie, right? You just have these moments of like, maybe it was this, maybe it was this. So there's been a lot of therapy with that and figuring out that, things happen and life happens. And I wish I could be as boisterous in like, everything happens for a reason, but I don't believe that. I just believe that life happens, and our lives are what it is, and there's nothing really controlling it in that matter. You know what I mean? So for me, it was just, that's how it lined up for us. And it was ironic that West, older brother, McCoy, was told that he might have cerebral palsy. And then my little West has cerebral palsy. Oh. So that was a weird dichotomy too, that it was like, whoa. Because everything McCoy went through in the NICU, that's what you would expect with a diagnosis. And then with West only having his blood sugar, it wasn't anything. But then the beautiful nurses, I love NICU nurses because they know so much, and they finally were like, what are we doing? And why is this baby still here? And then as soon as the right nurse got to him, which is also the medical field, I feel like as a mom, the people that is working for you, and not everyone jives personality wise or medically wise, and you just have to find your people.
Yep.
And that can be difficult, I think, for sure. So that's my beginning story of that part. So yeah.
All right. And then, so how long was he in the NICU? Not long. You said 7 days.
7 days.
7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he was diagnosed at 6 months. And then what happened? How did your life shift with that? Because I'm sure you had to go to occupational therapy and physical.
Yeah.
Were you working full time at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. So my sweet West, he cried from the day we got home from the NICU until he got his diagnosis. And it's kind of an ironic story because he just was not comfortable. And everyone kept saying, remember how I said, it's your second baby. I went through 3 pediatricians, 2 physical therapists, writing down notes. I had a stack about 1.5 inches thick that I threw up. My last physical therapist was like, something's wrong and I need help, because everyone was dismissing me. I went through, I was his total advocate. I mean, it's this little baby and everyone kept saying, it's your second baby, your first slept well, but your second does. Wes didn't sleep well. He didn't hit milestones. He had flattening of the head, which got us to physical therapy because they said he had torticollis. And my sweet physical therapist, who's actually still his physical therapist, 8 years now, she saved my life, because I was in a place of like, I felt crazy. And then I'm working full time. My husband works graveyard shifts. I have a rambunctious 4-year-old. And not to mention, in the meantime, I had gotten a dog, so my life was crazy. But literally, I got the MRI at 6 months old, which is super early for cerebral palsy, as you know, because he wasn't quite to like the big gross motor skills, so, but I just fought it and I fought him, and I'm so glad I did, because he literally stopped crying that night. It was almost like his heart said, Mom, you did it. And he was just a joy. He was a joy the whole time, but when you're in lack of sleep and he's crying and no one's on your side, luckily I got the best people around him and we just found the right people. But man, it changed our whole lives. And we went from, oh, this is the plan, as everybody does, to we don't have a plan anymore. And it almost made me a better mom to my McCoy, who's typical, because with kids with special needs for West, we didn't put a time or a length or what he should be doing anymore. He totally got that pressure cooker off him, and it was like, what he does will be great. And I think that should be for every child, typical or non-typical, because then they're able to grow the way they're exactly supposed to be. There's this constraint of time that people put on everything. And I feel like it's such a pressure cooker for these tiny humans who don't even know what they're doing anyway. So for me, it made me a better mom. And I could say that now, 8 years in. Probably if you talked to me, Jenice, then I was just so scared, because I felt so inadequate with this cerebral palsy diagnosis to be Wes's mom. I had no knowledge of cerebral palsy other than 1 or 2 people I had seen with a more severe diagnosis of cerebral palsy, but no one in my family that I knew of, close proximity. I never had experience in it. And I Googled, because when I got his MRI, I was by myself. The doctor was super cut and dry, which most doctors are. He has cerebral palsy. It means scarring of the brain. I said, what did I do wrong? He said, you didn't do anything. This is the amount of scarring there is. We'll see what happens, is what he left me with, and walked out. And here Wes is coming out of sedation. I'm sobbing. I don't know, I have to relay all this to my husband. I don't know what this means to me. So I went home and I Googled, which is everyone's go-to, but it's also the worst thing you can do. And it left me feeling really inadequate to be Wes' mom, because I didn't know that I could do what he would need me to do. So, as that time went by and I slipped into grief, as we all know, you call it the fog, but now that I've healed more, I feel like it, it's that grief bubble of what I thought our life would look like, or what I thought it should be. I'm very type A personality, so I'm a planner, I'm a doer, and when you get a kid with special needs, that goes right out the window. We lovingly call West our asterisks, because we commit to things, but then there's an asterisk of like, we would love to be there, asterisk, if West isn't too tired, or if we haven't had a long day. Our days just shift now. And he has the most gracious big brother who's his best physical therapist. McCoy doesn't see his disability. And so I think that is the best thing for our family, is how connected they are, because there's just something unique, at least in our experience, of seeing someone having to do things harder than it takes for you, and being able to walk that path together. They fight like cats and dogs. They are siblings to a T, but you'll never find anyone fight more fiercely for his brother than his big brother, McCoy. And that's a lot for a big brother. I feel like McCoy had to grow up faster than I intended with a special needs little brother, just because I didn't have the time. And, I think back of that time and it literally feels like a blur. We survived, obviously. Yep. I wish I had slowed down a little bit, just because now I'm at this 8 and 12 phase and time is fleeting. And we did it. And that girl that I was got me there. But I feel like, what I wish I would have known, and I just feel so grateful that I have been able to find the people that we have to help Wes have the best chance in experiencing life the best way he can. And for me, that took, to come out of the fog, I happened to cross paths with a random stranger. And I think I talked to you about this, but I had gotten a dog, right? So I have a crazy 4-year-old. My husband's always gone. I'm working full time. I'm lacking sleep. I got a dog because in that Google search, they said they might need a service dog. I mean, I was ready. So we went to the park and it starts raining and I'm sobbing and I can feel the rain on my eyes and I'm sobbing because, grief does not just settle. Grief comes and goes, and my husband's swinging McCoy on the swings and Wes is in the little bundle asleep and I'm holding this giant golden doodle because I've gotten a dog and I don't want to be muddy. And I feel a hand on my arm and there's 2 ladies. And she said, "I like your dog." And I said, "Thank you." And because you've been a mom who goes to therapies all the time, no human contact. I work from home. So it's like the minute they said, I just spilled, "Oh, I got him as a potential service dog for my son." And she stopped me and she said, "Did he have a stroke in utero?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Does it affect his left side?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Mine's 19, plays the drums, and is in college. If you don't limit him, he can do anything." And it literally was like, I don't know if you've seen those movies where it pans out, but it was like, I can do this. There is someone out there that has experienced it because it feels so isolating. And what I'm finding, having been in this nonprofit arena now for a while, in the community that we've found and are building up, is it is such a common experience, but it is so narrowing and isolating because if you met Jenice when Wes got the new diagnosis, I couldn't go for a play date. I was moving his body. Wes didn't walk until he was 2. He didn't do any of those big milestones. So I was physically at physical therapy, moving his body, opening his hand, doing all those things that I see him now run across the grass and help with the lawnmower. And it's life-changing. That just the experience is so much what you bring to it. I can't change cerebral palsy for Wes. He'll have it for the rest of his life. And for me, that was the big motivator, is I need to find a community for Wes. Wes has to have hope like I got in that split second from someone having some sort of experience. And I can be empathetic all day for cerebral palsy, but I will never have cerebral palsy in his context. So I was so motivated to make this little community where you can grow and meet people that are in the same experience, same diagnoses, and can show Wes, what, there's A, B, and C, and these are your options, and I'm living with it too. Or, other siblings for McCoy who, the siblings' job is huge. I feel like there's a lot of pressure, not necessarily intentionally put on them, but they have to grow up. And we were looking at a statistic with our board, and statistically, the sibling is the one who's going to be with the special needs child the longest. They'll outlive mom and dad. And so that is so important to bring value to their experience as well. So I am a big advocate that a diagnosis is a story for someone who has it, but it also involves the family, the caretakers, siblings. Everyone has their own experience with a certain diagnosis, and it's so exciting to be able to share, because when your world becomes so much bigger in that tiny isolated experience, you find strength. And that's been my experience.
I love that. I love that. So when did you make that connection, and how long did it take you to kind of get started with the nonprofit and
Sure.
Because that's
sure. Yeah. So,
even,
yeah. Yeah. So I did my fair amount of trying to find the right people with social media platforms. And I did my fair amount of Googling, but when you're in those depths of throes of a diagnosis where it's so deep, Wes was so little, we weren't sure what exactly was going to happen. My life was therapy. And so I didn't have time to really connect with people. I would meet people randomly, but I wasn't in that season of life. I'm all about seasons. And so it wasn't until we fast forward about 5 years and Wes started noticing his own difference. And he would say things like, "There's nobody like me, Mom. There's nobody like me." And he would say it constantly. And I didn't ever want to put adult words to his big child feelings, but I knew exactly what he was saying. And finally, he stopped me one day and he lifted his left affected hand and he said, "Like me, Mom, I need a buddy just like me." And I realized in all this time, I've collected this huge village of doctors, neurologists, OT, PT, family. We have people who love us, but no one that really knows the experience that Wes was experiencing. And so I made it my mission. I told my husband, we have to find a buddy for West. And the easiest way to do that, as we all know, is we have all of our beautiful providers, which I love them, but they've got that big old word of HIPAA that they can't really connect us, but they see caseload of similar. So I had this idea of connecting, getting within the hospitals, foundations, becoming a nonprofit, that we can be a resource, that a doctor can say, hey, I know of this resource. And if a parent, a sibling, a caretaker, a grandparent, an individual with a diagnosis wanted that type of connection, we could facilitate that. So we're basically closing the gap where HIPAA leaves it kind of wide open. You get to choose if you want to be part of this and share your information and find someone. So that happened. So that would have been, he was 5. And then, COVID hit. And I think what COVID did, the beauty of COVID, and I hate to say that because I know there was such sorrow and darkness with COVID, but I think it made a lot of people reevaluate life and say, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And that was for me. And I just looked at my husband, and the tip of COVID, we sold our house and we put all of our money into starting a nonprofit, A Buddy Just Like Me, so that we could facilitate these connections in a safe, inclusive, easy access kind of way to make these connections, because I couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that would be safe for everybody and easy, because I'm still a young mom. I mean, my kids are 8 and 12. They are older than Tiny, but I still work a full-time job. And so I still have a life. And I also want to I want to live my passion, and my passion is connecting with people. And I feel like it's such a human experience, and I feel honored that I was able to start it. And I have such a supportive board, and our mission is so strong. And we have been able to be in contact with a lot of hospitals here in Utah. And so we are a pending 501c3, but that just started. So I got my incorporation last July. And then we went live October of last year. So it took, because me and my husband funded it all. And now all of our donations go straight towards creating our community for safe, easy access, inclusivity. Of course, I stutter on that word. But making connections is so important. And for us, it's easy to be on Facebook or whatnot, but that's not everybody's skill set. Not everybody loves that. I mean, I love Facebook myself, but I always got lost in an algorithm. And so we just needed a place that was exactly where you need to go to find exactly what you need, whether it's hospitals in your area, people to connect with, a mentor with the same diagnosis, just a mom who's alone in her diagnosis that needs someone to say, this is a weird day. And you don't have to give a precursor of like, I love my child, or everyone just understands, at least for me in my experience in the community of special needs or of disability or all ability, however you connect with those words, you need somebody to just be a buffer. And even that simple moment of just a connection in the park for me, or, just someone that understands how monumental a rollover can be, or a smile, or someone who is home with their child who is nonverbal and has no one to bounce this feeling off of. That's what A Buddy Just Like Me is. It's a place, a hub, a connection, because for anybody who needs some sort of connection in a diagnosis. And we found that a lot of people were communicating. A lot of diagnoses have foundations and have things going on, but a lot of them would benefit from communicating, and no one was connecting those. And so that's our mission with A Buddy Just Like Me, is to be a one all-inclusive place that anyone can connect with anyone, no matter how close or how far. That's A Buddy Just Like Me, is making that connection for those that have a diagnosis. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, as you branch out and like start meeting people, like for instance, like me, I can go back to Kennedy Krieger Institute or to Guy DuPont Nemours Children for Hospital and connect with, face doctors and stuff, and like give them information, for you. Do you have like pamphlets? Do you have like,
yes,
to get this?
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So currently we have our website up. It's abuddyjustlikeme.com or .org. Either or works. And you can go and see how you want to connect is an option. We have our Finding a Buddy, which is someone with a diagnosis that wants to connect with someone with a similar diagnosis. Or you can even connect, like if you have a wheelchair or a feeding tube or you like the color purple. That's just,
Uh-uh.
and then the second one is our mentor program, which I think is such a beautiful experience, that is someone who has lived with the diagnosis experience, is willing to walk with someone who has a similar diagnosis or has questions. They're willing to be that person, because there's such a vital power between an experience. I love our providers. I love our therapists, but until you are in that experience, it's a whole different ballgame from what you can refer to. And it's just really just a type of friendship that you need. And then lastly is our caregiver community, which is so many beautiful people that include grandparents, parents, mom, dad, siblings, anyone who's kind of needing that connection. Because like I said, it is isolating. And I think that's the word that I've heard the most recently, is how isolating it is. I've talked about COVID, it made us all isolated. Isolation, there's a statistic that came out that said, isolation, the amount of isolation COVID has the same effect on our health as 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Isn't that shocking? So if you put that into the perspective of our community, where so many people are isolated anyway because of their diagnosis, they've been living their own pandemic. So in this beautiful world of everything's online, let's connect. Let's find the people you need to. And that is our aim and our goal with a buddy just like me. I have flyers I will send to you. That is what I need from everybody listening, is we just need people to know that we're there, that we have our purpose. Our nonprofit is a pending 501c3. Every donation goes towards our cause. And then what it is our mission is to keep our services free, to make sure that we're in every hospital, so that there's not some new mom that is 36 tabs deep in Google sobbing and thinking, what do I do? We just need one place, and we have the ability to do it. So that's our goal. And we've seen it come to fruition. Our first connection actually was my sweet West met his best friend, best buddy, Baylor. And what's ironic about their connection is Baylor and West lived 3 miles apart for 5 years, had the same neuro doctor and the same physical therapist, and had never known about each other. And they only found each other because of Buddy Just Like Me. So we literally could have walked to their house for 5 years, and so it's that close, but it's so hard to connect in the way that we can now. That our hope with a Buddy Just Like Me is to make the connections you need. And if you don't need the connection, someone who does. Everyone I run across has someone who has an experience. And that's the other thing that I get too, is a lot of moms that have kids who are older that said, oh, I would have loved this when they were smaller, but we need you. Because someone who's walked through that experience is so vital to the future success in a diagnosis, to a mom who needs that. I feel like even with Wes getting older and God bless his abilities are getting stronger, I never will not be an advocate for cerebral palsy. I would love to talk to anyone. I'm not the best person to talk to, but I have a heart and an experience, and I'd love to be anybody's buddy that needs it. So
I can tell you, we myself and a few others have been kind of going through that grieving process all over again, because our kids, this is the year where they should be graduating, but they're not on the diploma track, so they're on the certificate track. So to see their friends that they grew up with, their diploma, and even back up before that, that milestone of getting their license, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, going out with their friends, to prom, graduating, going off to so it's like we're like going through those older ones now, you know what I mean? And it is tough. It really is tough. So we'll message each other back and forth, and she's like, she's like, last year at this time I had to get off social media, because it was it was hard to see, because of course you always, it's hard. Definitely.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it on the head. That grief never goes away. It comes back in different times, different seasons, different ways, and it never stops. So I think that's something that people don't really talk a lot about enough. Yeah. Like grief always is with you. It's not, something that you ever heal from. It's something that you grow with. And it comes back. Those big milestones are huge for your child, and it's hard, and social media makes it super difficult. I feel like it connects us, but it very much divides us. So
And that was like one of the things too. It's like, Faith isn't on Facebook, so she doesn't like see a lot of this stuff. So sometimes she doesn't know.
Yeah.
But still, I'm sure she thinks about it. But
Mhm.
the other thing I was going to talk about, well, yes, too, like even just like the different Facebook groups, support groups, I also find it out there. It, I find a lot of them are for the younger kids. I don't see a lot of
Mhm.
support groups for the teenagers or the 18, 19-year-olds, like for that gap,
Yeah.
that transitioning youth.
Well, and that was a huge part too, is that we were noticing, just like everything in the systems that are created for our communities, you age out and then there's nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, you are just left. And so for us, that's why we had originally started with just younger kids and parents. And then we thought, you know what? No, everybody needs this connection. So we are for all ages, all diagnoses, all chapters of life, because it's needed. It's so desperately needed. So
It really is. It is.
yeah.
So when I emailed you, I had asked you about a word. And I sent you the flyer. Words are very important. So I wanted to see if you have a word and if you'd be able to tell us and share why you chose that word.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I have mentioned many times, I guess I'm being a very open book on your podcast. I'm so happy. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of therapy that I've gone through, a lot of self-healing, self-reflection in not only West diagnosis experience, but just life in general. I don't think mental health is discussed enough in our society. So I had to do a lot of digging into who I authentically am and want to be moving forward in the life that I am living, and reconnecting. So my word that I chose is intention, which typically means to aim or to plan, but I like the medical term for it, which means healing of a wound. I'm big into being authentically who you are, dancing to the beat of your own drum. So I am trying to live my life with the intention of always doing what is best for authentically me, healing the parts of me that I want healed, and making sure that more healing doesn't have to continue as my ripple goes through. That's my goal in life, is to create these beautiful ripples that I believe in. And so my word is intention.
I love it.
And so that's what I chose. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful. You do that for people who come on your podcast. That's so nice of you.
Yeah. I had started that business when I had gotten a gift from my senior director. I was like, what is this? And then I saw how, you choose your word and they hand stamp it. And I ended up getting my license and getting my maker certificate. And I thought that this would be a great thing for Faith, because as we do it, she can actually ink it, and then we can polish it off. We actually were going into some of the schools and did some fundraisers with the Best Buddies program. And her best buddy, they would kind of tell the mission behind it, and we would get the kids together and talking, get their words and stamp them one and gift them one, and then use it as a fundraiser. So it's just, words are very important, they're powerful. So I just thought that would be something that I would like to gift our guests.
Oh, it's so cool. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And the other thing I wanted to share a quote when I was looking on the website, and it was, let me see, the president of your board, and it says, "We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond," by Fred Rogers. I don't know. Ever since I read that, it just like stuck with me. I absolutely just love that quote.
Isn't that powerful? It's so true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's from Michelle. She's awesome. So Michelle is actually in our story. Michelle was West's original OT.
Okay.
And so she's loved she's known him since he crocodile rolled to now, shooting basketball hoops. And my heart hurt when she left us, because I value our therapist so much, as you probably identify with. When you click with someone, it's more value to everybody. And so, but I look back and I see now why, because she moved to the school district. And so she could be on our beautiful board because she no longer was West Services. So It's those lovely things that happen unintentionally that make the best moves for us. So Michelle is a light and such a great addition to our board. We were really grateful for her and her strength. So I love that she shared that. That's a perfect quote from Fred Rogers. And I love Mr. Rogers. I was definitely that generation.
So is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap things up?
I just hope that anyone who is finding us or listening to the podcast knows that there's a place for you with a buddy just like me. Anyone that you can share us with, please do. Our website is abuddyjustlikeme.com. .org works as well, but our mission is to connect with as many people as we can, because the more people we make connections with, the less isolating it is for the whole community. And the more hospitals that know about us, the more foundations, school districts, the more kids who are feeling that isolation, adults that are needing that connection in the later years in life can feel like there's a place. And there's such a power behind sharing stories. So if anybody ever wants to be spotlighted with us, let us know. If you have anyone that you want to send our way, we would love to hear. I think the value of the human experience is so vital.
It is.
And part of that is sharing your story. For me, it took me a while to even feel like, oh, this is just life. Like, why would I? Much to surprise, I am not so much a showboat of wanting to share our story, but it's been so incredibly humbling how valued it is and how needed it is to just show authentically where you are, and that there's a place for everybody's story, no matter if they feel like there is or not. You have a place as a buddy just like me. So that's what we do, and I'm so happy you had us, and I feel so grateful to call you a friend again. So that's so nice.
So excited. I know that's the hard part, is everybody lives so far away. I'm like, I start interviewing people. I'm like, I want to meet them like in person.
Right. Right. Well, hopefully someday. That would be so great. I'm hoping that, we get bigger and bolder and we're able to make so many connections that we can just have big, giant parties to get together. So wouldn't that be fun?
We can do a thing and go on one of the cruises,
wouldn't that be so fun?
That'd be awesome.
I think that would be amazing.
Providers on there, and then all of us parents can really connect, and the kids can
seriously, you just make it a big moment of connection. Connection is so vital. So yes, let's do it. Let's cruise, my friend.
Should. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Please listen and share. I will have her website in the show notes as well. And thank you again so much for being on the show.
You're amazing. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.